Usually when you fire up a navigation app on your phone, there's this very basic kind of unspoken contract between you and the software,
Right.
right?
Yeah. You put in the destination and it just gives you the fastest route.
Exactly. It's objective. It tells you, where the traffic is, where the tolls are, and that is literally it. But I want you to imagine for a second that you download this new GPS app and you're driving to a party,
Okay.
and it's in a neighborhood you've never been to before. So the app doesn't just give you the route. As you're driving, this voice starts telling you, um, avoid that street. The people there are deeply suspicious.
Oh, wow.
Or like, don't park near that house. The owner has malicious intentions. Suddenly, it is not just mapping the physical roads. It's actively altering your perception of reality.
It's injecting bias.
Yes, it's
Hey.
injecting bias, and it's deciding who is good and who is bad before you have even arrived. And that terrifying scenario isn't a glitch in our phones. It's actually a glitch in our social circles.
It really is.
Yeah, and that's what we're getting into in today's deep dive. We're looking at a text called The Cartography of Social Distortion, and it talks about people who do exactly this. They're called relational cartographers.
And I think what makes this concept so vital to unpack for anyone listening is that this individual exploits social systems to disenfranchise others, but they do it without needing direct authority.
Right, they aren't the boss.
Exactly. They don't have to be the boss. They don't have to pull rank. They gain their power simply by controlling the map,
Yeah.
dictating how the entire group interprets reality and the people within it.
Which is wild, because if you're listening to this and you're suddenly picturing like that one person on your condo board,
Oh, yeah, always one.
or, in your Slack channel at work, who always explains everyone else's motives to you, you are seeing this exact dynamic in real time.
You really are.
And the source text makes this brilliant distinction between understanding the terrain and owning the terrain. Because, on the surface, the cartographer often just looks like a highly involved community member, right? Just trying to keep the peace.
Yeah, but that surface level helpfulness is totally the camouflage.
Right.
If someone genuinely wants to understand the terrain of their social environment, they operate with genuine curiosity. They can tolerate uncertainty.
They ask actual questions.
Exactly. They talk directly to the people involved,
Right.
and they willingly revise their conclusions when new information surfaces. Because understanding is an open, dynamic system.
But ownership means locking the map down entirely.
Yes. To own the terrain, you really must control the map entirely. The cartographer positions themselves to decide who is credible, whose motives are suspicious, which facts actually matter.
They sort everyone out.
Right. They decide where everyone belongs within the social hierarchy. They aren't exploring the environment at all. They're conquering it by dictating its terms to everyone else.
But, mapping the room is really just step one. What blew my mind in the text is that they don't just hold this map in their head. They force the rest of the group to navigate by it.
Yeah, they become what the text calls a narrative monopolist.
A narrative monopolist.
Yeah.
And a perceptual gatekeeper.
Let's try to ground this for you. How does someone actually pull this off in a normal group of people?
Good question.
Let's say a standard corporate marketing team or like a tight-knit volunteer group. How does it start?
Well, it happens through this really quiet systemic framing. So imagine a new hire. Let's call him David.
Okay, David joins the marketing team.
Right. So David joins the team. The cartographer doesn't wait for the team to organically get to know David over time. They immediately start injecting bias into the social landscape.
Before he even unpacks his desk.
Exactly. They start mapping loyalties, they engineer consensus behind the scenes, and they quietly assign people these fixed identities based entirely on their usefulness to, the cartographer's narrative. So they are placing people into roles within a story that the person never even consented to inhabit.
Yes. Perfect way to put it. They might note that David asked a lot of questions about the budget during his first week.
Which is normal.
Totally normal.
Yeah.
But instead of just observing the fact, David asked budget questions, they ascribe an unverified motive to it.
Oh, I see.
They go to the rest of the team and they say, hey, David is trying to undermine the project lead by questioning the finances.
Wow.
Yeah. They do not merely describe his behavior. They interpret it, they package it as a threat, and then they circulate that interpretation as though it were just an established fact.
Wait, I want to play a devil's advocate here for a second.
Sure, go for it.
Because we all gossip a little bit, right? We all make assumptions about people based on limited information, especially when there's a new variable, like a new employee or a new neighbor moving in down the street.
Humans are sense-making machines, it's true.
Right. So how is this actually different from just, an ordinary misunderstanding or standard office chatter? Like, when does everyday interpretation cross the line into actual manipulation?
So the line is drawn entirely at intent and consequence. An ordinary misunderstanding seeks resolution.
Okay.
If I misunderstand David's questions and I genuinely just want to navigate the terrain, I might go directly to him and say, hey, your budget questions threw me off a bit. Are you concerned about the project?
And then he answers.
Right. David clarifies his intent. I update my mental map and the friction just ends.
Because the goal is clarity.
Exactly. But manipulation, which is the work of the relational cartographer, seeks control, not resolution.
They don't want it resolved.
No, they take that assumption about David, they treat it as hard evidence, and they use it to triangulate relationships. They pull other team members away from him.
And what if David tries to clear the air?
If David tries to explain himself, the cartographer doesn't update their map. They actually find a way to make his explanation fit their original hostile narrative. They don't want clarity. They want their version of reality to be the only version available to the entire group.
Which creates an absolute nightmare for David, because he isn't just dealing with a rumor at that point.
Not at all.
He's dealing with an entire environment that has been, like, pre-taught exactly how to view him. The text dives deeply into the weaponization of everyday structures, which is where this goes from being just a social annoyance to something genuinely destructive.
Yeah, and those structures, institutional procedures, leadership hierarchies, social networks, even reputational channels, they usually appear entirely neutral.
Like an HR department.
Exactly. A human resources department or a neighborhood association's grievance process, even just the regular group text among friends.
Right. They're just normal frameworks.
But they become instruments of exclusion when the cartographer supplies the sole interpretive lens through which every single interaction within those frameworks is evaluated.
So if the HR department is relying on the cartographer's map to conduct, say, a 360 review on David,
the review is rigged from the start.
Man, I kept thinking of it like being trapped in a funhouse mirror maze.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
You walk in, and no matter how still you stand, or no matter how much you try to fix your posture or just smile normally, your reflection is always going to be grotesquely distorted to the rest of the group.
Because the mirrors are curved.
Right. Because the mirrors themselves were curved by the cartographer to make you look like a monster.
And to make that funhouse mirror maze even worse, the cartographer is basically standing at the exit, acting as the tour guide, telling everyone else how ugly your reflection is.
Oh, that's so dark.
It is. The targeted person is no longer responding only to a single accusation. They are confronting this impossible catch-22 where every single response is weaponized against them.
The examples in the text of how this plays out are chilling, frankly. Let's look at David again. He realizes the team has been told he's trying to sabotage the project. So he decides the safest bet is to just put his head down, do his work, and stay completely quiet to avoid any drama.
Right, which makes sense logically. But the cartographer immediately points to that silence and frames it as guilt.
Of course they do.
They tell the group, see how withdrawn he is. He knows he's been caught. If he were innocent and a team player, he would be engaging with us.
Okay, so David realizes silence isn't working for him. He speaks up, he goes to a team meeting and defends his record, clearly stating, he supports the project lead.
Then the cartographer just flips the script and uses the defense as proof of aggression.
It's a trap.
It's a total trap.
Hey.
They say, look how defensive and combative he is being. We just tried to have a normal meeting and he made it hostile. This instability proves he's a problem.
It is maddening. If he disagrees with the narrative, that disagreement is framed as him being, difficult to work with. Any attempt he makes to sit down and clarify the situation is viewed as further proof of the original negative narrative. You are literally damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Because the cartographer has successfully shifted the group's focus away from observable facts and onto attributed intentions.
That's a huge distinction.
It is. You can objectively prove you didn't steal a laptop by showing a receipt. You cannot mathematically prove that you don't have, quote, malicious underlying motives.
Yeah, how do you prove a negative like that?
You can't. It is a completely unfalsifiable accusation. The cartographer thrives in that space of subjective interpretation, and they pressure everyone else in the system to navigate by this manufactured map.
So this brings up the most baffling part of human psychology for me.
What's that?
Well, If this dynamic is so visibly restrictive to the target, and honestly, if the cartographer's behavior is so reliant on subjective interpretation without any hard proof, why do otherwise highly intelligent, rational people just surrender their judgment to this default narrator?
That's a great question.
I mean, we were talking about educated professionals, smart community members. Why do they just take the map?
It really comes down to cognitive efficiency and evolutionary shortcuts.
Okay, how so?
In any group setting, evaluating every single interpersonal dynamic takes immense cognitive energy. It requires time, emotional labor, and continuous unbiased observation.
Which is exhausting.
Exactly. We are biologically wired to seek efficiency and conserve those cognitive calories. So when the cartographer steps up, radiating absolute certainty and says, hey, I have analyzed this person, I know what their motives are, here is the map.
The group just goes, great, thanks.
Yeah. The group often accepts it simply to save energy and avoid friction.
It's outsourcing perception. We're essentially saying, I'm too tired to survey the land and figure David out for myself, so I'll just borrow your lens.
The text actually uses a highly specific term for this dynamic. They call it self-erasing accommodation.
Hold on, self-erasing accommodation. Let's break that down. That sounds like a very academic way of saying we shrink our own intellect to fit inside someone else's reality.
That is a perfect translation of the concept. What appears on the surface to be group loyalty, everyone nodding along with the cartographer during a meeting, is actually self-erasure.
Wow.
Group members surrender their independent judgment merely to preserve the cartographer's framing, because challenging that framing requires immense effort.
And it causes drama.
It creates immediate social friction. Furthermore, there is this implicit threat hanging in the air. If you challenge the cartographer's map, you risk becoming the next David.
Oh, right. You might be the next one assigned a negative fixed identity.
Precisely.
But the terrifying irony here is that the people in the group don't feel like they've surrendered. The text points out this incredible psychological blind spot.
Yeah, the illusion of free thinking.
Right. People accept a downstream, secondhand interpretation, they install it as their main frame of reference, and they genuinely still regard themselves as free thinkers.
Because their surrender was voluntary, they mistake it for autonomy. They think, well, I chose to listen to the cartographer, and I agree with their assessment, therefore this is my independent thought.
But they didn't do the work.
No, they never examined the primary evidence. They simply consumed a prepackaged narrative. Once a group outsources its perception to one individual, the collective autonomy of that group is effectively dead.
Because the cartographer has won.
Yeah, they have centralized the group's reality.
So before we get into how to fight back against this, I have to ask about the cartographer's own mindset.
Okay.
Because viewing someone as this Machiavellian mastermind sitting in a dark room, calculating how to destroy David, it feels a bit like a comic book villain,
Right, it seems exaggerated.
Yeah. So can someone control the terrain without consciously realizing what they are doing? Like, is this sometimes just an unconscious defense mechanism?
We really must maintain a forensic, analytical tone here, because the goal of the text isn't to diagnose the cartographer or guess what is in their heart. The reality is it can be both. Sometimes it is highly calculated, predatory, and intentional.
Sure.
But other times it is a profound, unconscious defense mechanism. Yep. It can be driven by deep insecurity, past trauma, or just a desperate need for control.
They're mapping the room to feel safe.
Exactly. The cartographer might genuinely believe their own distorted map because their own internal anxiety requires them to view others as threats in order to feel secure.
And I think this is the crucial takeaway for anyone listening, whether it is a conscious corporate strategy or an unconscious trauma response, the impact on David and the rest of the group is exactly the same.
The damage is identical.
Yeah.
The environment becomes toxic either way. And that is why our focus must remain on the mechanics of the system and how to protect our own perception, rather than getting bogged down and trying to, psychoanalyze the person drawing the map.
We have to practice relational self-defense.
Yes, relational self-defense.
I just love that framing so much. It positions critical thinking not just as this abstract academic exercise, but as a literal shield for your daily life.
It is a shield.
And the source lays out a toolkit for this, a set of maxims to help you break the cartographer's spell. Let's try to weave these into our hypothetical situation with David and the marketing team.
Sounds good.
Let's say I'm on that team. I keep hearing from the cartographer that David is actively trying to sabotage the project. The first tool the text gives us is recognizing that repetition is not verification.
This is where the echo chamber effect really traps us.
Oh, totally.
If you hear the narrative about David 5 times from 5 different people in the break room, your brain naturally wants to register that frequency as truth.
Because everyone is saying it.
Right. But relational self-defense requires you to pause and ask, am I hearing 5 independent primary observations of David's behavior? Or am I just hearing the cartographer's interpretation repeated 5 times by people who outsource their perception?
So you have to trace the rumor back to the source. And that ties right into the next concept in the toolkit. Consensus is not proof.
Such a hard one to internalize.
It really is. Just because the whole team has adopted this lens doesn't mean the lens is accurate. Historically and socially, we know that large groups of people can confidently agree on a complete illusion.
Oh, absolutely.
The consensus only proves that the cartographer is highly influential. But how do I actually break that consensus in my own head?
By enforcing a strict boundary between observation and interpretation. You must actively distinguish David's observable actions from the intentions the cartographer is attributing to him.
Give me an example.
If the cartographer says David is trying to sabotage us, you must demand the primary evidence in your own mind. You ask, what did David actually do?
And if the answer is, he asked 3 questions about the Q3 budget during the all-hands meeting.
Exactly. Asking questions about a budget is the observable fact. Sabotage is the interpretation. You must separate the two. And this is where the cartographer will use their demeanor to try and bypass your critical thinking. The text warns us that confidence is not epistemic authority.
Wait, epistemic authority? That's a bit of a mouthful. For anyone who hasn't taken a philosophy class recently, you just mean that sounding incredibly confident doesn't actually mean you have the facts, right?
Yeah, that's it, exactly. Epistemic authority means someone legitimately possesses knowledge or truth based on actual evidence.
Okay, I see.
The cartographer often lacks evidence, so they substitute it with absolute, unwavering confidence. They speak with such authority, such conviction, that you actually feel foolish for questioning them.
You just assume they know what they're talking about.
Right. They make you assume they must have epistemic authority, they must know something you don't. Relational self-defense requires you to look past that confident tone and demand the actual data.
Okay, but let's talk about the hardest part of this toolkit. The text suggests that to truly bypass the gatekeeper, you have to communicate directly with the person being characterized. So in our scenario, I'm supposed to bypass the cartographer and go straight to David. But hold on. Going directly to the targeted person sounds great in theory, but in a highly political corporate environment, doesn't that just risk you getting dragged into the drama?
It is definitely risky.
Yeah, like if the cartographer sees me talking to David, how do I bypass the gatekeeper without becoming collateral damage myself?
It requires incredible tact. And you are totally right to highlight the social risk. But consider the alternative.
Which is?
The permanent surrender of your own perception.
Oh, yeah.
You don't necessarily have to make a grand public show of aligning with David. You simply engage him directly in normal professional contexts. You ask him about his budget questions yourself. You collaborate on a small task.
Keep it low-key.
Keep it low-key. But the mere act of direct, unfiltered communication shatters the cartographer's monopoly because you are no longer relying on their map to navigate your relationship with David.
You're doing your own surveying of the terrain.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And most importantly, as you survey, you have to maintain a constant willingness to revise your conclusions.
Because you could be wrong.
Right. The cartographer's map is static. It requires David to be the villain forever. But a healthy, understanding mind is dynamic. If you are willing to change your mind when new facts present themselves, whether those facts make David look good or bad, you simply cannot be controlled by a static, distorted map.
It really all comes back to that initial distinction we talked about at the very beginning. True understanding requires curiosity, not control.
Precisely.
If you want to genuinely understand the terrain of your workplace, your neighborhood, or your friend group, you have to be willing to explore it yourself, to get lost a little bit, to ask actual questions, and to let people show you who they are through their own actions rather than just accepting a script someone else quietly wrote for them.
And recognizing these mechanics is honestly incredibly empowering.
It is.
We all like to think we are fiercely independent thinkers, but our social environment heavily influences us, often in ways we don't even detect. Taking back the responsibility of observation, refusing to outsource your perception is how you reclaim your autonomy.
It's a lot to process, for sure. But the scariest insight from this text isn't that one person wants to control the map, it's that they don't even need us to believe every single detail.
No, they really don't.
They just need us to stop drawing our own conclusions. Because once one person owns the map, the rest of us just mistake navigation for freedom. Next time you're handed a map that tells you exactly who the villains and heroes are before you've even met them, choke the GPS. Keep drawing your own lines. Catch you on the next deep dive.